Alright, so I'm going to be doing a full demonstration of the 1020 system hookup. I have my timer right here. I'm gonna start it in just a second. I have my new prep, my paste, my Q-tip, my gauze, and my electrodes, and my glass head, my wax pencil, and my measuring tape right here. And I'm gonna press start for my timer right now. Okay. So, first things first, I'm gonna mark my nasion, which is the bridge of the nose. Then I'm gonna turn it around to the back of the head, and on a person you'd feel a bump. It's right at that kind of the outer bump of the skull. Mark right there. Then I'm gonna mark my pre-auriculars, which is right here, which is like the bone in front of the ear. I'm gonna do that on both sides. All right, and now I'm going to turn the glass head around. I'm gonna take my tape measure using the centimeter side, marking from my nasion to my inion, all the way back to the back like that. And I'm getting 36. So I take 10% of that 36 centimeters and I measure up from the nasion, 3.6 centimeters. That gives me my FPZ measurement. And then I turn the head around, go to my inion, and I measure up that same 3.6 centimeters. And this gives me my OZ. So now I'm gonna measure from my FPZ to my OZ. And that is 29 centimeters. So I'm gonna come up I'm gonna take half that measurement and mark, and half of that would be 14 and a half, my bad. I'm marking at the very top. That gives me my CZ measurement. Then I measure from my FPZ to my CZ, and I take half of that 14 and a half, which would be 7.25. And I mark right there, the 7.25, and that gives me my FC. And then I do the same thing in the back of the head. I measure from my OZ and I take half from my OZ to my CZ. I take half of that measurement, which is 14 and a half. That's half of that is 7.25, which is right here. And that gives me my PZ measurement. All right, that is the first chain. Next, we have our pre-auriculars on either side. So I'm going to measure across. Actually, I'm gonna do it this way so it'd be easier for me. Make sure my tape measure goes through that CZ mark at the top. I'm getting 36 centimeters. 36 centimeters. So on this side, I'm gonna start at the pre-auricular, measure up 10% of the 36 centimeters, which is gonna be right 3.6 centimeters right there. Okay. And I like to put a pretty big mark right there because I feel like it makes it easy for me to see, and later on when I have to cross that, it makes it very much easier to connect. And then I'm gonna go to the other side and measure up 3.6 which is right. Whew. There. So now I go from, oh, and this mark on this side is going to be F8, T4 that I just created on this side, and then this one right here is T3. So I'm going to start from my T3, and I'm going to make sure I go through that CZ mark once again, going over to my T4. I got 29. That means I'm going to take half of that and mark it up at the top, and that's actually going to cross my CZ mark. And then I'm going to take half of that. I'm going to measure from my T3 to my CZ and mark half of that, which is going to be 7.25. And this creates my C3. And I'm going to turn it around, measure from my T4 to my CZ. Perfect, and take half of that measurement, which was 14.5. So half of that measurement will be 7.2 centimeters. And that gives me my C4. All right, that is chain 2 complete. Next, we will be doing the circumference, and we'll start right here. I'm going to cross my FPZ, and then to give me a reference point, I'm going to measure all the way around the head, making sure my tape measure goes through OZ. Through that, and I'm getting 55 centimeters. Actually, yeah, 55 centimeters. I'm gonna take I'm gonna take 10% of 55 centimeters, which is 5.5, and I'm gonna take half of 5.5, which I believe is 2.75. So I'm gonna mark 2.75 away from my FPZ. And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. 2.75 away from my FPZ, which is right here. And I'm going to use my tape measure to cross those. And the marks that I just made, this is FP1 right here, and this is FP2. I'm going to start at FP1 and go around using the 10% measurement of the circumference, which is 5.5 centimeters. And I'm going to start measuring. So 5.5 centimeters right here is going to be right there. And then I'm going to start at this mark right here. And again, do 5.5 centimeters. And this will cross my T3. And then I put my 0 part right there and measure another 5.5 centimeters. And then I do it again at the next point. Oh, and this mark right here is going to be my T5 that I just made. And I'm going to start at my T5, measure again 5.5 centimeters, which will end up right there. All right, now I'm gonna kind of just twist the head back around, and I'm gonna start at my FP2 right here and basically do the same thing going in the opposite direction, or going on the other side of the head. Okay. 5.5. It's right there. Starting on that one again. This isn't showing up very well on the camera, so I'm going to dip my wax pencil into the new prep. Hopefully that will make it a little bit easier for y'all to see where I've crossed it. Is that any better? I think so. It's a little bit better. But it... Okay, so now I'm going to take my tape measurement, and now that I've crossed my T4, I'm going to place this again at 5.5 centimeters, marking it right here. This gives me my T6 measurement. And then I turn the head around again and measure 5.5 from there. Should be right here. And what I'm gonna do to make sure that it's lined up correctly, I'm gonna put this right here, and looks like it's a little bit off, but not by over a centimeter, between my O1 and my O2. So I'm gonna call that good, and then that will be my complete third chain. All right, so now I'm going to begin the banana strips, which for the banana strips, I'm gonna begin at FP1 and place my tape measure on FP1. Making sure I go through my C3 all the way back. Oh, and I forgot a very important step. In the back, line up with your OZ. Line up your O1 with your O2 with your OZ, and go ahead and cross those. So now you have a reference point for while you're doing your banana strips. So I'm going to place my tape measure on FP1, making sure I go through my C3 all the way back to my O1, and I'm getting about, we're gonna call it 25 centimeters. And we're gonna take half of that 25 centimeters, and half of 25 centimeters is 12.5. So I'm gonna mark it 12.5. And that crosses my C3. Next, we're going to measure from FP1 to my C3, which I get 12.5. We're gonna take half of that 12.5, which is 6.25, and mark right there. And this will give me my F3. And then I'm gonna measure from my C3 all the way back to my O1 again, getting that 12.5 once more. Then I'm gonna mark on the back of the head half of that 12.5 centimeters, which is 6.25. And this is my P3 mark. And that completes that side of the head. So now we do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm gonna start at my FP2, making sure I go through my C4 I'm gonna go all the way in the back. And I'm getting 25. So I'm gonna take half of that 25, which is 12 and a half. I'm gonna mark at the 12 and a half mark right here. And this crosses my C4. All right, so now I'm gonna measure from my FP2 to my C4. And I get 12 and a half, and I take half of that 12 and a half, and I get 6.25, measure that on the front. And that gives me my F4 right here. And now I come to the back and start at O2 and measure to OZ, and I get 12 and a half. Take half of that 12 and a half, which will be right here. 12 and a half, half of 12 and a half centimeters is 6.25, which is right here. All right, now that that is complete, now I just have to do the 4th and 5th chain. The first one I have to take from, I have to create a point. So from FP1 to T3, I kind of line them up. And then I'm gonna use those 2 points to cross my F7. So I have a reference point for that, and I do the same thing from T4 to FP2. I just use those points to help me cross that. So I have another reference point on this side. And then I'm going to place, this crosses my F8 by the way, and then I place my tape measure on F8, going through F4, FC, and F3, going all the way over to F7, and I get 21, so 11, oh, hang on, let me adjust that briefly. Actually, I get 22, yeah, it's 22, so I have 22 is 11, so I'm gonna mark my tape measure, I'm gonna take half of that 22 and get 11, and mark that, which crosses my FC. And then I'm gonna take half of that 11, which is 5 and a half, and mark right there. And that's gonna cross my F3. And I'm going to take my tape measure, place it on F8 to FZ, and take half of that, because the measurement is 11 centimeters, is gonna be 5.5, which will be right here. All right, so that finishes up that part. So now I come to the back, do the same thing from O2 to T4. I'm gonna use those 2 reference points to cross T6. And on this side, I'm gonna use my reference points of T3 and O1 to cross my T5. So now I measure from T5 to T6. I'm getting 25. Half of 25 is 12 and a half. So I'm gonna make a mark at 12 and a half, which is gonna mark my PZ. And I'm gonna measure from my T5 to my PZ, and half of 12.5 is 6.25, so I'm gonna mark there, just right here. All right, and now I'm gonna measure from my PZ to my T6, and that gives me my 12.5. Take half of the 12.5 and you get 6.25. Mark right there. Oh, let me make sure I have this right. There we go. Perfect. And all that mark or crossed perfectly, so I'm all set. Now I'm ready to begin attaching the electrodes, and I'm going to begin from the I'm going to start, I believe, actually, on this side of the head. All right, so I'm going to start with a green electrode. All right. So I'm going to take my paste and my new prep and have those set out and ready. Normally I would, if this was a real head, I would dip my Q-tip into the new prep, scrub one spot on the head for about 15 seconds in one direction to prepare the site for the electrode. But this is not a real head, and it would prevent the electrodes from sticking if I did that. So I'm going to take my electrode cup, scoop it into the paste, and then I'm going to take a piece of gauze and have this in one hand and this in the other, and I'm going to start with my O1 in the back. So I place it on like that, then I place my piece of gauze, my gauze square over it. All right, and now I'm going to get another electrode prepared, dip it in the cup, or dip the cup into the paste, press it on, gauze pad goes over top, gauze square. Then you just keep repeating until this head is completely covered. And again, I would be scrubbing, if this were a real person's head, I would be scrubbing each mark to reduce impedance, because we don't want that to be over 10. Now I'm doing my C3 placement. I usually try to have it so the wires are kind of pointing to the back of the head. So that way it's not trying to spin around and being tugged on and stuff, and it'll prevent any movement of the electrodes and provide a prettier study. T3. Make sure that's on there right. And again, just scooping with the cup and placing on the head. You want some of the prep to come through the hole of the cup, so that way it sticks to the gauze square a little bit better, and that's what I've noticed anyway. Placing on FP1 now. Alright, just put the wire going towards the back of the head so it doesn't want to move around or anything like that, because that's not what we want. placing on FC now. Working my way down the first channel. Placing it on the back. With a square over it. And again, I'd be scrubbing each of these areas before I would be placing the electrodes on for about 15 seconds in each direction, or I'm sorry, in one direction. Alright, now I'm ready to move to the other side of the head. So I'm going to start with my FP2. Guide that wire down the midline of the head. Green wire here. Now I'm getting my F4 on. Oh. Alright, now I'm placing on my F8. Now I'm placing on my T4. I'm gonna kind of guide that one over to the back of the head so it's not hanging on by itself. And now I'm going to do my C4. That went on well. Now moving to the back of the head, I have 3 more electrodes to put on. Have my T6 going on now. Next I have my O2, if it would go on. There we go. O2 is on. Now time for P4. Alright, so that completes the basics. I'm going to go ahead and put on my A1 and A2, which go behind the ear on that bone right there. And that's where the A1 and A2 go. So I'm going to go ahead and put those on as well. And on the other side, I'm going to do the same thing, trying not to disturb any of the wires that I have hooked up here. Right on that bone that's behind the ear. place a square of gauze over it. That is all done. And that is the complete EEG hookup. Ta-da! Make sure I got everything right. Yep, all my marks are done correctly. Everything is marked. And yeah, between my PZ and my CZ would be my ground, and between all my FPZ would be my reference. All right, that's complete. And as for my timer, I've been doing this for about 30 minutes. Thanks for watching.